Alright, this next video is for Cyrus. He has a robot part that he's trying to create. And looks like it has a couple different layers to it, so it gets a little tricky, but doesn't look too bad. So I'm going to start making this with a couple of circles. I want them to be roughly the same size. Just getting these, I'm assuming from the picture, this is tilted a little funny. This is actually flat across the bottom, flat across the top. If not, maybe a couple little tweaks. Actually looks like that might bump up a little bigger, which means that if we drew a line going across here, the two circles, I don't know if I got that right or not. Let's make this tangent to this. Okay, and the bottoms of circles would be tangent to the line, and this circle would be just a little larger, still horizontally aligned with the other. And this would still be a horizontal line, but this circle might be just a little bit larger than the one next to it. So let's see how I can do that. Already it doesn't like that. Alright. Alright. So they share the same line down here. It's a slightly larger circle. I made it 5/10 larger, which is actually quite a bit. Okay, and I'm going to make just a little bit of a fillet between these two circles, so it's a little smoother. And that will be that main part. This little extra tag out here. We have to use a couple of lines, and to make this as accurate as possible, you should really use construction lines. So let's make that a construction line. Whatever this distance is, let's also make another construction line out here. So have that go straight up vertically. Turn that into a construction line. Dimension between the two. This is the biggest your part can be. So if you are measuring between these two surfaces, this edge, and this would be the dimension you put in. You can do the same kind of thing with the line here. You know this part is flat, so you're trying to figure out how tall this is. You'd put this flat on your desk, you'd measure up to the top with your dial caliper, and see what that difference in height is. Okay? Then you can make a little circle that's going to be tangent to your upper limit and your outer limit for width and height. I extend this line all the way up to here. I want this to be tangent to this circle, and you would need to figure out, again from setting this down on a table, measuring the height difference, where this would intersect. Okay, so that'd be something kind of like this. You'd measure the height up, and then you'd say trim. Here's my trim feature. And I want to make a coincident point with the end of that line and this line here. We already have that it's also constrained to the circle, so now it should be in the right place, where if we measured this, it'd be a fairly accurate representation. can already tell this is a little funky, but yeah, I guess it's not so bad. Alright, so we could do this a couple different ways. I think the easiest way is to extrude it to the overall width. Then make a new sketch on here. And again, this is one of those things where we can project geometry. And what that does for me is it tells me where the center of these circles are. So when I go to put in these holes, this should be in the correct place. So I'm cutting those out. There's a line that's here. If I project my geometry, then I can trim off the top and the bottom of this line. To know where that's supposed to go, make yourself a construction line. Measure with your dial caliper how far from this edge to this back edge here, and then just dimension it. Measure with your dial caliper how far from that edge to this edge here, and dimension that. That'll get you the correct angle. For this, we need to know the width, and we need to know how far from there to there. So you just put your dial caliper inside, pinch it, and it should get it about right. It also looks like, just from the picture, it will probably be lined up horizontally, and it already did that for me. Oh, I can't do that. Here. Looks like it should be lined up horizontally with this, so the two midpoints should match. So if I go to change this, it would change it from either side. As far as how far in it goes, again, measure from this point down to this point. You can use the depth on your dial caliper, depth indicator. So you're measuring from this line out. Trim off the parts that you don't need. So we are cutting that whole chunk. And I went through the trouble of making those circles, but I didn't use it. So I'm going to turn the visibility back on, go back to extrude again. When I cut, distance all, and then right click and turn the visibility back off again. Of course, I don't have the width right, but this should be fairly close to what you were looking for. And then to change the color, go to either default or generic. Generic, I think, has the colors in it. No, this part actually has the material type. Default has the color of the material. So, generic material, change your default to blue, or cyan. And that'll get you pretty close to what you're looking for. The only other extra steps you might do is just add like a fillet, a 3D fillet to the outside of this. To make it look a little bit nicer. And to make it easier on you, when you go to dimension this, just make everything the same radius.